The theater is the most powerful indication we have that social life requires geographic space. When people develop a theatrical awareness, a sense of the importance of the stage, they're more likely to precipitate a town renaissance. We have a bunch of people, myself included, who have made a deliberate effort to form a town here by living close to the parish. I hope that other people will look at what we're doing and try to relocalize a lot of activity.
Welcome to the Singing Dancing Catholic, where we talk about music, theater, dance, media, and performing arts from the Catholic perspective. I'm James Mark. The Singing Dancing Catholic is the official podcast of Oratorio, St. Louis's only urban center for Catholic cultural and performing arts, located at St. Francis de Sales Oratory in Fox Park, St. Louis. The mission of Oratorio is to enrich with performing arts the shared effort to keep Fox Park a beautiful place to live. For information on cultural events, concerts, dances, music lessons, and how you can participate, visit oratoriostl.com. And now, about today's guest. Nicholas Rao is a doctoral candidate in philosophy at St. Louis University. He has an MA in philosophy from St. Louis University and a BA in philosophy from the Catholic University of America. He currently works as a teacher and theater director for St. John Paul II Preparatory School in St. Charles, Missouri. His research field is the ethical and political importance of town life. He has written for the European Conservative, the Latin Mass magazine, 1 Peter 5, and the Remnant newspaper. Since 2023, he has directed and acted in plays for the Benton Dramatical Club of St. Francis de Sales Oratory in his neighborhood of Fox Park. Nicholas, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you.
So, a theater company in 2025, 2026, what brings us to the point we need to start a new one?
Well, the word company maybe isn't entirely accurate. I refer to it as a troupe. The original name for our group is the Benton Dramatical Club. Where I would distinguish it from a company is that we are a social organization connected with a parish, meaning that our purpose is not primarily economic, although economics is an important part of it, but that, as I'll probably discuss more, the project is to integrate economic activities with other spiritual, intellectual, and artistic activities.
So more of a holistic, community-focused.
Yes, and then practically speaking, we're not charging for tickets. So I don't know. I think that disqualifies us from being a company.
And is there any historical precedent for that, a club as opposed to a company?
Well, the Benton Dramatical Club here was, I don't know when they started using the word club, but I could tell you something about the history. Maybe that will put it in some perspective. So the group was started in 1877 by Father Lotz, who was then the rector of St. Francis de Sales Parish.
Father Lotz?
L-O-T-Z, Father Lotz. And
So dramatical club that was started by a priest.
It was started by a priest, and it set a trend of the artistic directors of the club being the priests of the parish. So for a very long period of time, the directors of the plays were the rectors of the parish or priests established at the parish. Yeah.
Do you know of anything like that today? A cleric-run dramatic club?
Not today. I'm not aware, and nor am I really aware of theatrical organizations like this and of this level of seriousness being tied specifically to parishes. I've seen productions at parishes
or schools.
And really what it involves is the tight parochial organization of society, American society at the time, starting in the late 19th century and then going well into the 20th, that it was a center of economic life. It was, especially for immigrants, very important. And the Dramatical Club was very much tied in with the German character of the parish here. The structure was very, very tightly organized. There were ticket subscriptions. There were competitions among different German dramatic clubs that were parish tied. The Benton Dramatical Club was noted in the late 19th century for having won a big interparochial competition. But as a rule, it reflected the parochial and then especially the German character of the parish. Unsurprisingly, the last German language play was produced in 1917. But before that, the last secular German language play they did was in 1913. So that gives you a sense for many decades after the founding, they were producing plays in German.
So historically, it was a society, a community, and then it had this theater element tying it together. What you're building today is both of those things again. You aren't just creating a theater company. Like you said, you've actually got a social, cultural component underpinning it.
That's right. And I see the interesting thing is that we did not discover this history of the club until after we'd done our first performance. And I see what we're trying to do, and I'll explain a little bit about what that is, as very much connected with what Father Lotz was trying to do for this reason, that Father Lotz's original purpose was to start a young men's sodality. Father Lotz, sodality, a fraternity, a club, what we would think of as a youth organization. And what he wanted to do was create a young men's youth organization, and he realized, in what I consider to be a flash of medieval inspiration, that you're better off with a guild than a club. So the club to some degree is a misnomer, but what he was thinking, which I think is quite accurate, was that you're better off forming a group of people united by the aspiration to excellence and a common activity than you are by just having a group of people united by a disposition or an affection. That I've found that youth organizations work a lot better when they are defined by a task, by excellence in a particular task. And that was really my inspiration in connection with my friends' inspirations for starting this theater group, which was quite simply at the beginning the desire to have structured social interactions, that I would get together with young friends, young adults, mostly connected with St. Francis de Sales Parish, but also out in St. Louis. And we wanted to do something more than drink and have a good time. We wanted to do recreational things that suggested we were part of a common economy, but in the more broad classical sense of economy as an exchange of goods and services.
Now, what's the difference between a club and a guild?
Well, there's no strict definition, there's no strict distinction, but in modern terms, I would think that the distinction is that a club is essentially a recreational and, you might say, affective organization. It's a group of people who want to share space because they like each other and because they share a certain background, a common background. So you could have ethnic clubs, you could have age-based clubs, you could have social clubs, whereas a guild, in the sense that I'm using it, is a group of people united primarily by a common craft. So the two senses are not mutually exclusive, but what Father Lotz saw was that the fraternal feeling you get with a club was more likely to arise from a shared activity. That there's a certain objectivity to a guild that you don't necessarily find in a club that I think takes more time with a club. So the original plan was to just hang out and read through plays together, and then we had this opportunity to perform, to use the facilities at St. Francis de Sales, and that's when we found out about the historic organization that had arisen, that had been founded here. So we took on their name and saw our project as very related.
Now, you say you started with readings. You've clearly progressed to now, I think, 4 productions that you've completed?
We've completed 3 productions, so 3 Shakespearean productions, which have the distinction of being the first Shakespearean productions in the history of the club. But we've done Midsummer Night's Dream in winter. We did Love's Labour's Lost in the following spring, and then we did The Winter's Tale. You'll have to remind me. You were in that. You'll have to remind me when that was.
Roughly this time, I think, last year. Something like that.
So we've had 3 full-scale Shakespearean productions so far, and we are preparing for our 4th, which will be a departure from Shakespeare.
What was your motivation to start the club? You've identified a couple of these like social, fraternal things. Was there anything more to it?
This is a complicated question because it partly has to do with my love of theater, and I was thinking about this earlier today. Partly my love of theater and partly my dissertation project. I'm doing a degree at St. Louis University. And my dissertation is about the town. And really, The shortest answer I can give is that I see
The town per se,
the
St.
town
Louis.
as an institution.
The town as an
the
institution.
town broadly,
Yeah.
which is a term that Aristotle comes out of Aristotle. But the simplest answer I can give is that I see the town as a really powerful, I see the theater as a really powerful allegory for the town. And I realize today, looking back, that one of my biggest, I suppose, subconscious influences is that I grew up at a time when digital culture was still very much becoming a part of social life at large. It wasn't quite as integrated as it is in our age of smartphones. And I can think of my own childhood in terms of before or after that moment when the instinct in the evening was to go and get on a laptop or go and divide by these private activities. And to me, the theater is the most powerful indication we have that social life requires geographic space, because I think that's a sense that's really been lost nowadays.
That social life requires geographical space.
That a unified life, whether it's political or recreational, requires a geographic place. I think that intuition is really obvious when you look at theater. Why? Because you can't have a plot without a stage. In other words, the physical unity of a play, the fact that it's set on a stage in a finite space, that is necessary for us to even conceptualize a plot, right? When we think of a dramatic plot, we think of a stage. And the argument that I try to make is that the same is true of the town. When we think of political life, we really have to think of the town. And when we can't think of the town, it's hard to imagine political life as a unified thing. And
So things like the planet and the earth and the globe and the stars, that's too broad.
It's too broad, and so are
The
political.
cosmos.
Yes, and so are political organizations like nations. I think the fact that we think of the nation as the paradigmatic political organization rather than the town is a problem, because a nation is relatively abstract, whereas a town is a place, and it's traditionally a place that you can see. We think of skylines of cities, we think of walled towns in the Middle Ages and in ancient Greece. I think that when people develop a theatrical awareness, a sense of the importance of the stage, they're more likely to precipitate a town renaissance. I see that the theatrical life really as having an important part to play in what I call a cometic renaissance, from the Aristotle's word for the town, the kome.
Oh, sure, like community.
Yes, it has the same etymology as community.
So not comedic, although it could be.
Not comedic, cometic.
You could
cometic.
use comedies to show people what real community looks like.
We can, and we have.
Well, yeah. And the comedy, I guess, that's coming up.
Yes.
Will this be your first comedy?
Everything we've done so far has been comedy. This will be our first comedy in the modern sense. So the last three plays we did were Shakespearean comedies, which means they involved moments of heartache and tragedy and murder. But we're about to do Arsenic and Old Lace, which is
Wonderful.
Really a farce. And
What's the distinction, farce and comedy?
a farce was especially popular in the 19th century, and it's like in Edwardian England. For the farce is a big deal. I think of a farce as being it's really a slapstick. It's a comedic play that is more concerned with slapstick and with archetypes, with stock characters, than it is with realism and with wit. There is a good deal of wit in Arsenic and Old Lace, but the scenario of the play really is a slapstick scenario.
So they'll be physical.
There will be physical comedy, which was sort of my plan, was to move away. In the process of maturing our theatrical chops, my plan was to do a play that would require a little less of us in terms of intellectual comprehension and diction, and more in terms of choreography and basically on-stage dynamics. I wanted to do, because a Shakespeare play you can really pull off well with very little movement, whereas Arsenic and Old Lace, a lot will rely on comedic timing, physical comedy.
So coming back to the social component, these are all friends of yours, the cast, more or less?
More or less, yes. Well,
Are they all ready for this? Do they have a background of doing physical comedy? Are they comfortable with
Some of them,
Or is this a challenge for them?
it's a challenge for all of us. Some of them had no background in acting before we started up. Others had some background. None of us have any kind of professional background. I took a couple acting classes in college. I've written some theater, but it's a new thing for all of us. But nevertheless, it's a trait that a lot of us share non-coincidentally, for two reasons. One, because most of us are drawn to the Latin Mass. And the Latin Mass it's very performative. It answers a need that modern souls have for customs and structure. So if you go to traditional parishes, you'll see people who are much more conscious about dress and much more conscious about language, not out of vanity, but out of a sense that the kind of people that we want to become requires entering a role. And so I think there's a certain theatrical instinct that's already present among a lot of traditionalists that makes theater more intuitive to them. And the other reason is that we have a bunch of people, myself included, who have made a deliberate effort to form a town here by living close to the parish, by spending a lot of time with each other. And one really important feature of that town building is what I call the re-economizing of friendships. And what I mean by that is taking our recreational friendships and trying to make them more permanent by forming a primitive economy. And I see entertainment, recreation as a great way to start. If you can entertain yourself, you've reached a very important milestone in communal independence.
Would you call entertainment something that has been missing? You mentioned growing up in an age of the digital habits forming and community perhaps, or you mentioned also the move away from the town to the nation, to the earth, to the bigger things. Has entertainment diminished with those things?
Entertainment, like most things in our society, has become domesticated. If you think of groceries being brought to your door, theater has been brought to our door, music has been brought to our door. Most people who want to be entertained are going to be entertained through very passive, home-brought media. Even entertaining yourself in the sense of hanging out with your family and making music, reading plays, which is something I try to do when I'm back with my family in New York. Those are things that don't come intuitively anymore. That when we want to be entertained, we turn to social media or home film, home TV. So yeah, theater, entertainment, like everything else, has become something that we can do without the really important moral, intellectual challenge of entering a public place or entering a common place. I think that it's really important that some of our basic activities are done socially.
So this could potentially have a lot of impact, what you're doing here, because you aren't just bringing passive entertainment, it's also rebuilding community. What are some of the other things that in an age of today, there's still a lot of people who are more or less totally addicted to digital and passive entertainment. How could a dramatic club with a strong social binding agent be impactful today?
Well, I'm careful not to overextend the significance of what we're doing, except as a model to other people. What we're doing is limited. It's limited in value. It's limited in influence. But like you basically said, I hope that other people will look at what we're doing and try to relocalize a lot of activities. I think education is an obvious area, right? If you have a community of people who want to homeschool, who want to educate their own kids, instead of going out of the community to find education, try and form networks within your community where people who are really educated and good teachers can contribute. You can create a sort of barter economy of education in the same way that you can with theater. And this is another reason we're not really a company, is that we've really not operated with a budget so far. Everything that we've done has been a pooling of the resources of the members. And it's proof that when people really want a good or a service, they're willing to make mutual sacrifices that don't always require money. I think it's just non-monetary economies are a really important feature of a town.
The actual economy is really kind of just a material reduction of the economy you just described. real value tends to start with something totally non-monetary, and then money is a measuring stick of sorts. But the real value is coming from something divine.
Exactly, and I think the abstraction of the economy, just like the abstraction of the family, the abstraction of friendships from a common public space, that is something that we're trying to remedy through theater. We're trying to, because when you watch a play, when you watch a good play, you're being presented with a mini society. And it's that's not a purely conceptual relation, actually, that if you look at the history of ancient Greek and pre-Greek cities, there's evidence that the agora, which was the Greek marketplace, in a lot of cases grew out of literal theaters in towns. There's evidence that some early, I think it's Mycenaean towns, they had these amphitheaters that eventually grew into the more hybrid public marketplace. So it has always been the case that theater and theatrical spaces are a sort of active public reflection in which a community looks at itself in a very artistic way. And when you watch a play, what you're seeing is a mini society. You're seeing a society in action. And so it's not even the act of producing the play, but the actual content of the play, which I hope can inspire people to want to create similar spaces and to integrate all of their different activities in real geographic physical spaces.
What are some ways people can do that?
Like I mentioned, I think education is really helpful because education is something that a lot of conservatives in particular want to do themselves. And education, you need teachers, you need a community. Another way that I mentioned as well that we're doing that is just by making sure that we live close to the places that are most important to us, because a public space has to have a center. And for a Catholic, that center is the church. If you look at medieval towns, the intuitive center of a medieval town is the church. The church is often connected with the marketplace. So one other thing you can do, which is really influenced or modeled for us by the German immigrant parishes that gave birth to the Benton Dramatical Club, is you can start turning your parishes into literal economies. There was a credit union operating out of St. Francis de Sales Parish back when it was a German immigrant community, and there's people even now at St. Francis de Sales who are involved in all sorts of crafts and guilds that they share with the community. So really, wherever you have space, you have the possibility of an economy. That's my simplistic way of looking at it. And here at St. Francis de Sales, we have the benefit of a lot of space. And that space is being used in really interesting ways. The way you're using it for music lessons here, the way that the co-op is using it for classes, the way that people like Mrs. Browers are using it to teach people how to sew, really in important tactile crafts, and then the way that we're using it by taking advantage of the gym here with this beautiful proscenium stage. So any place you have a space.
Sure. So those things you've listed there, a couple of guilds, some music, the theater, what's missing? What could be added to this space?
In the short run, what's missing is just more people. You need more people to move out, and you need more people to be willing to sacrifice their autonomy, which is traditionally a really hard demand to make of Americans. Americans want space. And Americans are kind of unique in that respect. The English are similar, but Americans really want space. So you're asking people to make a sacrifice of autonomy. But another thing that you have to do is kind of get over this very industrial idea that worthwhile products require global networks. There's famous essay called I, Pencil. I don't know if you've read it. But it's this, I don't know when it was written, but it was written by a sort of free market economist talking about the journey of a pencil across the globe in the process of its production. And his point is that we should be grateful that we have these global assembly line processes that can produce a pencil. But the implication there is that we live in a world where if we want good stuff, it has to be globally managed. And that's really patently false. People can make their own clothes, they can produce their own education, they can entertain themselves. And so what I would love to see is people taking that more seriously, realizing that what is possible locally is much more than we're raised to think. And unfortunately, that means making an active, disciplined effort to think non-technologically, at least where technology means modern digital technologies. So it's really the challenges, the way I see it, are really mentality challenges. But I think they're worth meeting because the desire for community is such a visceral, universal, powerful desire that people have. People want to be together, and they want to be together in ways that are not just whimsical and recreational, but economic and real. I mean, the really exciting thing about the first play that we did was just that a majority, not everybody, but a majority of people attending the play are in the parish. And so it's just really fun to go to a play and see people that you know and recognize from the community.
In ways you would never see them.
In ways we'd never see them, which is there's one very amusing facet of that, which is that it's and this is kind of to my point, that it's so common in Catholic youth circles to find that you're mostly engaging with other young adults as potential spouses, that there's a very heavily dating and marriage dominated social life, and it's surprisingly unusual to have this more relaxed artistic experience of engaging with people your own age.
So the complete opposite of passive entertainment.
Complete opposite of passive entertainment, and you see people you know, or people that are your same age bracket, doing these really creative, interesting things, and it's what a culture looks like.
So it sounds to me like let's say, target audience for attending this isn't just those who appreciate theater, but those who potentially, like some of your actors you mentioned, no background, could benefit from community.
Oh, absolutely.
If they were to attend, obviously they could watch the show, but even when it's over, they can come up, they can meet you, they can talk to other cast members, very approachable, and maybe even get involved in the subsequent production.
That's right, and I think it's important to add that I joke with people that my mission is always to add a little Mediterranean chaos to the German environment. But my goal with putting on these plays was to do something where the quality, or perhaps a better way to put it is the professionalism, doesn't outrun the sustainability. So it's really important to me that we keep this going, and we show people that these are regular, sustainable, integratable activities within our community, that these are not one-time things that require so much effort and so much preparation that they burn us out. But
it sounds like also where some of that drive that's giving that longevity and lifeline to it is the actual uncoerced, universal, ubiquitous desire for community.
That's right. And the desire for certain specific social skills that are cultivated in theater, chiefly good posture, knowing how to present yourself, and then an appreciation and mastery of language. Because that one of my goals is to stick with well-written English language plays, because when you speak well in a role, you learn how to speak well in more casual environments. Same thing with learning how to present yourself physically. So there's great social skills that even professional adults can stand to benefit from.
Excellent. Nicholas, the founder of, the Reviver, what would you call yourself?
The acting director
of the Benton Dramatical Club.
That's right.
And Arsenic and Old Lace. So we look forward to seeing you there, March 8th, March 14th, and March 15th at St. Francis de Sales Oratory in Fox Park, South City. Nicholas, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Mark.
The mission of Oratorio is to enrich with music the shared effort to keep Fox Park a beautiful place to live. For information on cultural events, concerts, dances, music lessons, and how you can participate, visit oratoriostl.com. Thank you for listening.